So I just have to be honest. I I did not think that I would be the way I am during this entire lockdown process. I got going into it, I thought that this would be like a blessing. I would have so much extra time to do things that I've never had time to do before. I had these visions of, wow, I'm going to come out of this whole lockdown thing and tell people that I wrote a book and I started a business and I climbed mountains and got another degree, or I hadn't done anything like that. In fact, if I were honest with you, it takes everything I have just to stay sane in all of this, with everything being shut down. And I'll see people online, and they'll say like, "Oh, gyms are closed, going running," and I think to myself, I didn't like running before. I'm definitely not going to run now. I don't have the energy for that. It's taking everything in me just to stay normal, like much less to think about doing anything beyond what I've did before. It just wasn't how I thought it would go. And I don't know about you, but I've had to fight these thoughts of, come on, Garrison, do more. Or these thoughts that, Garrison, you're not who you think you are if you do that. Or, Garrison, what are you doing? Or, I'll just won't be doing anything, and then thoughts come to my head. Garrison, you're just lazy. You should be doing more and more and more. Look at that person. You're less than that person. And I just have these thoughts of, like, I don't know what else to call them other than just shame that just come into my mind with this perceived pressure that somehow I have to do more than I ever have before in a time that looks different than it ever has been. But here's the truth. Like, after thinking through all this, I realize that that's just not a mindset I have during these days of lockdown and COVID. It's a thought process I have all the time of just this thought that I'm not doing enough, and then the shame that comes from that. Have you ever felt that way? And then consequently, I find myself more critical of others simply because I know I'm just echoing the voice that's in my own head. And I don't know if you've ever felt this way, but have you ever thought that somehow because it's hard for you to accept yourself, and how could a perfect God accept you? And so the question is, how do we break this? Like, how do we break this cycle of just this constant pressure, or this kind of cycle of shame that we get into, and beating ourselves up when we fail, or telling ourselves that we're not doing enough, or somehow thinking that we don't deserve love? How do we break this? How do we break that cycle and begin to live in grace? There's the event you may recall in 2010. It happened in the country of Chile, the Chilean mining accident, where 33 miners were in a copper mine, and it collapsed. And they were trapped 2,300 feet underground. You may have heard, it was all over the news, and what happened was that the United States got involved, and the NASA Space Agency, and over 12 corporations from around the world, and they developed this capsule-like structure. Many of you remember this. And they lowered it down through a drilled hole, and one by one winched each of the miners back up to the surface. And on October 13th, 69 days after the mine collapsed, all 33 men were saved. We love seeing and hearing real life stories like that, where the helpless were rescued, that the people that had the resources gave of themselves to save those that were in need. It was so popular that it was estimated over 1 billion people streamed the event online. It was a great day of rejoicing when they all came out in the middle of the night, saved, rescued. But the truth of the matter is, we love hearing stories like that, but we never want to be the ones that are helpless. We never want to be the ones that are in need of a rescue. But the truth is, in the eyes of God, left to ourselves and our own efforts, we are. We are helpless in and of ourselves to save us. And we are in need of a rescuer. Ephesians 2:1 puts it like this, that we were dead. We were once dead because of our disobedience and our many sins. Like, God describes us as dead. Dead. Like, unable to do anything to connect us back to God. We were dead. We weren't just good people that did bad things, that if we did enough good things to outweigh our bad things, then we could reconnect ourselves with our Creator. No, we were dead, God says. Unable to get back to Him, and we were desperately in need of a rescuer. Desperately in need. It's kind of like when you're on the phone and you enter into a dead area where there's no service, and you're talking and it cuts out, and you've done this before too. You begin to speak louder, don't you? Like, you begin to yell in your phone, and you think that if you speak louder, they can hear you. You're like, hello, hello? Like, we're yelling. You've done it. I have too. But it doesn't matter how loud we yell, how hard we try. If the connection is lost, it doesn't matter. There's no getting back. And God knew of our helpless situation. And so God, out of His great love for us, sent a rescuer to come down, much like the capsule went down to the 33 trapped miners to save them out of their helplessness. Jesus Christ came down to us in the form of a man and died on the cross so that through our faith in Him, we would receive rescue. We would receive rescue. Romans 6:8 puts it like this, that when we were utterly helpless, Christ came at just the right time and died for us sinners. Now, most people would not be willing to die for an upright person, though some might perhaps be willing to die for a person who is especially good. But God showed His great love for us by sending Christ to die for us while we were still sinners. God showed His love. He showed His love for us. In other words, God gave us grace. He gave us grace. If we could define grace, I would define it like this. Grace is the undeserved, unmerited, unconditional kindness and favor. And grace from God is undeserved, unmerited, unconditional kindness and favor from God. That's grace. You can't earn it. You can't do enough to gain it. It's given freely, undeserved, and it's a gift. Ephesians 2:8-9 puts it like this. It describes the grace of God, that you were saved by whose grace? His grace. When you believed. And you can't take credit for this. It is a gift from God. Salvation is not a reward for good things we have done, so none of us can boast. It's a gift. It's a gift given freely. In fact, that's what a gift is. You can't earn it. If you earn it, it stops becoming a gift. It becomes a wage. Much like at a birthday, if you were to get a gift for someone and you opened it up and you were excited and they asked you, do you like the gift? And you said, oh, I love it. And then they said, okay, that'll be $54. It wouldn't be a gift. But gifts are given freely. Do you see what God is doing here? He is making a point to describe that it's His grace, that it's a gift from Him, that it was because of His love. It's all about God. It's not about us. The attention was never meant to be placed on the recipient, but the attention was always meant to shine back on the giver. The recipient was helpless, but the giver was loving and generous. It's all about Him. And here's what I've learned. At the times in my life where I have been the most critical of myself, when I have beaten myself up for failures and sins, when I have shamed myself for not meeting my own expectations or the expectations of others, it's a realization that I have shifted my focus off of a great God into me wanting to be great myself. It was never meant to be about us. The grace given to us as helpless individuals was all for the purpose of shining the praise and the light and the glory upon God. It was never meant to be about us. Do you know where the first mention of grace appears in the Bible? It appears in the book of Genesis, chapter 6. In this chapter 6, God is describing a wicked generation. In fact, so wicked that it says that every person on earth was filled with wickedness. Every person. And then it says, in Genesis 6:8, it says this, but Noah found favor with the Lord. That word there, favor, is the Hebrew form of the word grace. Shanan is the word. Grace. Unmerited, undeserved, unconditional favor. That in the midst of all of this wickedness that God is describing in the world, God chose to give favor to Noah. To give Noah grace. And what's interesting is that it doesn't describe what Noah did before that. It doesn't describe Noah being pure in all his motives. It doesn't describe that Noah never lost his temper with his children, that he was the best father ever, that Noah graduated at the top of his class, that every thought that entered Noah's mind was pure, that he never gossiped about someone else, that he always spoke the truth, never lied. It doesn't say that. It just says that out of the wickedness that was there, God chose to give grace to Noah. The Greek word for grace is the word charis. In fact, you pronounce it not with the K. The K is silent, and so it's charis. In fact, I would agree to you. There's some people name their children charis. It's a great name. But how you speak it in the Greek language is charis. The Hebrew form of the word is chanan. And the root word of the Hebrew word grace means to stoop low. To stoop low. In other words, to stoop low, and it means to extend kindness from a superior to an inferior. That's when the Hebrew language used the word grace. When talking about kindness extended from a superior to an inferior. for the superior to stoop low. To stoop low. God stooped low and chose Noah. Governments and corporations stooped low and extended grace to the Chilean miners who were helpless. And Jesus Christ stooped low to save helpless sinners like you and me, for the purpose of connecting us back to Him so that He gets all the glory, not us. Not us. So the next time thoughts of condemnation enter your mind because you haven't met an expectation, the next time you fail and you begin to beat yourself up, the next time you begin to criticize yourself for not doing enough, would you shift your focus back to a great God? A great God who stooped low and extended grace to people like me who desperately need it.